The war, so far this year, has not exactly gone in Germany's favor. But this week, there's a whole new dynamic to the war. This week, Germany wins. April 1st, 1944. Yeah, timing. Huh? They're moving. Like a giant amoeba. Wait, hey, you know amoebas? Amoebae? I wonder who first identified them, right? Huh? August Russell von Rosenhof in 1755. Okay. But wait, did he call them amoebae? No, he called them the little Proteus? What? Because the god Proteus was a shapeshifter. I did not know that either. Wait. If he didn't call them amoebae with an O before the E, well then who did? Christian Ehrenberg in 1830. What? Although the genus with the spelling Amiba from the Greek change was already in 1822. Okay, well, yeah, no thanks. The things you learn here, huh? Yeah, all right. Yeah, bye. April 1st, 1944. The Germans have 4 army groups fighting on the Eastern Front. As you know, they've been hit hard the past few months and lost a lot of territory. And this week, 3 of those 4 get new commanders. I'm Indy Neidell. This is World War II. Last week, German troops invaded and occupied Hungary, bloodlessly. The Japanese invasion of India continued, but their fight on Bougainville, well, the Solomon Islands, ended for good. Allied operations in Italy came to a halt for the time being, but in the Soviet Union, the Red Army continued breaking through in Ukraine and even managed to surround a Panzer Army. There is action in both the north and the south of the Eastern Front this week. 1st Panzer Army needs to break out of its encirclement, but the only 2 options are not especially attractive. They can head west and southwest and make for 4th Panzer Army, which would involve facing 2 Soviet tank armies and crossing 2 decent-sized rivers, or they can head south and cross the Dniester, where they at least have a bridgehead near Khotin. Hans-Valentin Hube, commanding 1st Panzer Army, wants to do the latter, but Erich von Manstein, commanding Army Group South, is primarily concerned with preventing them from either being pushed back into the Carpathians or pushed south behind 8th Army. He also doubts very much that army could actually cross the Dniester, which is almost to spring flood stage and is more than 1.5 kilometers wide there. So on the 26th, he orders Hube to head west, which means fighting past 4th and 1st Guards tank armies. The tactical problem confronting Hube was an unusual one, namely, to hold the army together, pull back his front on the north and east, and attack to the rear. The effect would be to create an ambulatory pocket which would move west along the Dniester like a giant amoeba. He creates a north and a south group. Each is to hold with the infantry and attack with the armor, first aiming for crossing the Zbruch River. On the 29th, the northern group manages 2 bridgeheads across the river, and for the next 2 days, they continue towards the Seret River. The southern group reaches the Zbruch, and the north and east of their front falls back. Hube estimates it will take him 6 days to get the whole army across the Seret, but with the supply situation as it is, they could likely not fight out of another encirclement. As for the Soviets, by the 27th, Georgy Zhukov's armor from 1st Ukrainian Front is outside Chernovitzy, and by the 28th, Ivan Konyev's 2nd Ukrainian Front has forced the Dniester and closed off Khotin. So even as 1st Panzer Army is trying to maneuver, it is surrounded by 6 Soviet armies. A blizzard begins as April does though, and shuts things down for the time being. Down to the southeast, Rodion Malinovsky's 3rd Ukrainian Front takes Nikolaev the 28th and has split German 6th Army in half. His left flank, and much of his center, now sets its sights on Odessa. As for the other end of the front, I did not have time to talk about it last week, but the Soviet offensive at the Narva bridgehead came to its end the 24th. By that time, Soviet Second Shock Army was just no longer combat ready after the weeks of hammering, and Leningrad Front commander Leonid Govorov got Stavka's permission to put his whole front over on the defensive. On the 26th, though, the Strachwitz battle group hits the Soviets south of the Tallinn Railway in an offensive to destroy their Narva bridgehead. Commander Hyacinth Graf Strachwitz von Großzauche und Kamenetz, which is a mouthful I'm not likely to repeat, though a tank commander, thinks his Tigers will be useless in the spring swamps and uses lighter Panthers instead, backed by an airstrike. In heavy fighting the rest of the week, they managed to split the bridgehead in two and destroy the west half of it, causing pretty big Soviet casualties, but losing 41 dive bombers in the process. Walter Model has been commanding Army Group North for the past 2 months. Well, on March 28th, Hitler's adjutant Rudolf Schmundt calls Model to tell him that he will soon be replacing Manstein commanding Army Group South. For Model, the news came at an inconvenient moment. He had just completed a situation estimate in which he said that the Army Group might be able to give 2 divisions to Army Group South after the front settled down. Hastily, he reworked the estimate and in the altered draft reached the conclusion that Army Group North could give up 5 divisions and a corps staff immediately, and the 12th Panzer Division as soon as 2 self-propelled assault gun brigades could be sent to replace it. So, on the 29th, still in command of Army Group North, he goes to see Hitler to basically raid his own command to benefit his coming one, even raising the number of divisions to 6. He then telegrams his headquarters that Hitler okayed the transfer and tells his staff they have half an hour to get the order carried out. Army Chief of Staff Kurt Zeitzler has to intervene and tell the Army Group to not do any of this. On the 31st, with Model now commanding south, Zeitzler convinces Hitler to only transfer 1 division from north to south, and not right away either. So, Manstein and Ewald von Kleist from Army Group South and A are dismissed from duty the 30th. Model and Ferdinand Schörner take over from them. Georg Lindemann takes over Army Group North. South and A will become Army Groups North and South Ukraine next week. Hitler awards both Manstein and Kleist the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross. He says that while he approves of what they've done the past year, the time for such tactical masters is over, and what they need now are leaders who will extract every last ounce of capacity to resist the enemy from the men. Manstein had persisted in showing flashes of military genius that made him indispensable in individual crises. In the aggregate, however, his displays of talented generalship had only made it harder for Hitler to avoid the realization that Germany was not merely passing through a period of adversity, but entering one of hopelessness. Model and Schörner inherit a generally precarious situation, although it seems that the end of the current Soviet offensive is not too far off based on supply lines, distances covered, and casualties. Tarnopol is surrounded. 1st Panzer Army is trying to break free. 6th Army is retreating from the southern Bug. The Crimea is cut off, and in the gap between 4th and 1st Panzer Armies, the Soviet spearheads have nearly reached the foothills of the Carpathians. They're not too far east of Hungary. Now, Hungary was occupied by German forces last week. Hitler's command decides this week what to do with the Hungarian army. They will not disarm or disband it, but will use it because of the alarming developments just to the east. The officers will be purged, and the largest unit will now be the division, and they will mobilize and send 3 divisions to the Eastern Front and not the 8 that were suggested last week. The newly mobilized units will be under German command, and there will be several German divisions in Hungary. This will all ensure that any remaining Hungarian forces in the country will not have any local fighting value. The Hungarian situation was now stabilized, in the most favorable form for Hitler. Not only had the country been occupied without fighting, but had created a situation in which half of the occupational divisions could be spared, while the Hungarian army was engaged in the war against the Soviet Union. You want to leave a path home, in case you should need it. Some Japanese units, though, no longer have one. Last month, all airworthy aircraft at Rabaul left for Truk and points beyond. The garrison was effectively isolated. Sea traffic, except for barges, ceased. The Allies had total control of the air and water in the seas around New Britain and New Ireland. The only way in and out of Rabaul was by air. Even that connection was tenuous. Allied airfields were beginning to ring Rabaul. It's true, actually. By now, the only way to get out was to escape the immediate vicinity and then fly due north for at least an hour and make for Truk, which itself is questionable safety-wise. Flying in, of course, means running the risk of flying into one of the many daily Allied raids. Still, Hideki Tojo, Japanese Prime Minister, and several other officers flew in with the Naval Chief of Staff and Minister of the Navy in late February, which is pretty courageous. It is his only visit there, so far at least. They were there to talk about the defense of Rabaul, but pretty much told Hitoshi Imamura to just, hold on to the end. The Allied bombing campaign around then changed in nature once there were no enemy planes to challenge them. They targeted buildings to flatten Rabaul completely. By March 10th, 60% of Rabaul was flattened. By now, there are under 150 buildings still standing. The Japanese are in underground facilities by now, as is most of their storage. Other Pacific islands are being targeted this week. On the 30th and 31st, Ray Spruance sends 3 groups from TF-58, including 11 carriers, to hit Palau Island in the Carolines. The Japanese, however, spot the approach and send away their combined fleet warships, though much regular shipping is hit. On the 1st, the raids continue, but against Walleye. For the 3 days of the attacks, 130,000 tons of shipping is sunk, as well as 150 planes shot down, for only 26 of their own. One plane, in particular, is a huge loss for the Japanese. On the 31st, Miniichi Koga, commander of the Japanese combined fleet, is killed in a plane crash in a typhoon overseeing that removal of the fleet. Because of political issues, there is no immediate successor appointed. His chief of staff, Shigeru Fukudome, survives. The plane crashes in the Philippines, and he manages to make it ashore, where he is picked up and taken prisoner by Filipino fishermen. He has documents on him when in the water, and these are also soon picked up. They are the plans for Operation Z, or Z. A final massive battle to so deplete the American forces that they will sue for peace. This involves like 9 carriers and over 1,500 planes. The documents make their way to guerrillas and then are picked up by an American sub and taken away. They are not in code, just plain text. I imagine we will see if their loss or their finding have any effect on Japanese or Allied strategy in the future. Their various strategies are in full play right now, though, in Burma and India. The 17th Indian Division is still trying to pull back to Imphal. On the 26th, their rearguard pulls back from the Manipur River and the bridge is blown. The Japanese have been also fighting hard around milestone 100, but General Yanagida gave the order to pull back. Yanagida had had enough. All his reservations about the Imphal offensive came to the fore. He ordered the 215th Regiment to pull out and sent a signal to Mutaguchi about his decision. In this, he noted the strength of their opponent, questioned the rationale of the operation, and remarked on the impossibility of meeting the deadline. He is supposed to have gone so far as to suggest the suspension of the Imphal offensive. Mutaguchi was livid. He resolved to remove him from his command. On the 28th, units from the 17th Indian Division heading north make contact with reinforcements heading south. Except for a roadblock by part of a Japanese battalion, which is soon cleared, the road to Imphal is open. A few days from now, 17th Indian will arrive there and will go into the reserves. 14th Army Commander Bill Slim has foreseen that they would need real reinforcements at Imphal and Kohima, but getting them there by road would be pointless. The fighting would be over by the time they got there. They'd have to fly in. So he asked Theater Commander Louis Mountbatten for 2 or 3 dozen Dakotas. Thing is, the only available planes are the ones the Americans use to fly supplies from Assam to China, and diverting any of those officially requires the consent of the American Chiefs of Staff. That would take time though, so Mountbatten just unilaterally orders them diverted. By now, the 5th Indian Division has been flown in bit by bit from the Arakan. According to Katoch, this is the first time an entire division has flown from one battlefield to another. 2 brigades have been flown into Imphal, and the 3rd is being sent to Dimapur and then is to go to Kohima. Montague Stopford's 33rd Corps is put under Slim's control and will concentrate at Dimapur. Japanese 15th Division's Advance Guard, the Honda Raiding Unit, has the job of cutting the Imphal-Kohima road near Kangpokpi. This they have done by the 29th. However, the bulk of 31st Division, not just a small force, is heading for Kohima, and this Slim is still not aware of. Neither is 4th Corps Commander Jeffrey Skoons. They think the main Japanese objective is Dimapur. They had not spotted the importance in Japanese thinking of the village of Kohima, set at 5,000 feet on a loop of the Dimapur-Imphal road. Slim, reasonably enough, thought that the seizure of Kohima would be attempted only in conjunction with the much more important target of Dimapur, a huge supply dump on the Lido-Imphal line, that hub around which Allied activity revolved. If Dimapur fell, the province of Manipur would be indefensible, still well cut off, and all overland supply to China at an end. To everyone's surprise, the Japanese decided to aim at Kohima instead of Dimapur and to invest it with an entire division, not just a single regiment Slim was expecting. More on this and the reasoning behind it as the situation develops. Speaking of Vinegar Joe Stilwell, he's trying to get Merrill's marauders down south of Shaduzup, close off the entrance to the Mogaung Valley, and cut off Japanese overland supply from Myitkyina. 2 battalions of the marauders have been clashing with the enemy, and Stilwell has ordered them to prevent an advance beyond Napumga. On the 29th, Merrill has a heart attack, his second since he got to this part of the world, and is evacuated, replaced in command by Charles Hunter. The Japanese attack Napumga the 30th and lay siege to it in the evening. And here are 2 notes to end the week. On the 26th, Juho Paasikivi and Karl Enkel fly to Moscow to meet Soviet Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov. He restates the terms of an armistice with Finland, but now they are more in line with what was talked about at the Tehran conference. The Soviets no longer insist that any terms be completed before an armistice, and also no longer insist on the internment of German troops in Finland, but their expulsion by the end of April without assistance from Soviet forces. There are a couple of new wrinkles though. They want $600 million in reparations and want Pechenga, but offer Hanko in exchange for that. We shall see soon enough what the Finns have to say. From the 27th to April 5th, convoy JW58 sails from Iceland to Murmansk and suffers no losses. However, the planes from its escort carriers do shoot down German scout and bomber planes and sink 3 U-boats. And that is the week. With action in India and Burma, the loss of a Japanese top dog and some big plans, and Soviet attacks in the south of the Eastern Front and German ones in the north. As for Italy, the Italian fronts have gone quiet. The Allies' latest operation there ended last week. But something else ends there this week. See, last week on the 18th, Mount Vesuvius, whose eruption in 79 AD destroyed Pompeii, erupted once again. By midnight, orange cataracts of lava spilled down the slopes to the west and southwest, carrying trees and brush like burning boats. Huge dust clouds billowed above the summit, brilliantly illuminated by blue forks of static electricity that danced across the sky. On Sunday evening, tongues of lava licked the first houses in San Sebastiano, which exploded in flame. On the 21st, the volcano sent fountains of lava shooting up into the sky, and then a huge gray cloud 7 kilometers high before dumping purple and gray ash as deep as a meter all along the coastal plain. The volcanic action finally ceases this week on the 29th, with 26 deaths total, and of course, loads of property damage. But for the purposes of this channel, there is a military cost. The pummeling of stones and ash on the Pompeii airfield destroys over 80 B-25 bombers that are parked there. Today, on April 1st, so this story is actually true, not an April Fool, one of the B-25 bombardiers whose plane was destroyed writes home with these words, "Never trust a volcano, but trust me to continue to bring you the war week by week until it ends, thanks to the support of the TimeGhost Army." You can join the TimeGhost Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. These are the newest officers in the Army, and Alex Short is the Army Member of the Week. Natural disasters like volcanoes are one thing, but if you want to see an episode about a man-made one, you can click here for our Between Two Wars episode on the Holodomor. Do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.